Hi, you're listening to the Yoga for Balance podcast. I'm your host, Heather Jurdy. Thank you so much for listening. This week on the show, I have Kellie Livingstone Yoga. Meet Kellie and hear her inspiring story. She'll also guide us through breath work later in the show. And please remember to subscribe and share this episode with anyone you think it might be helpful to. Thank you again for being here and enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Yoga for Balance podcast, Kellie.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I'd love for you just to start out sharing with listeners a little bit about you and what your experience of yoga has been.
What a question. Well, I'm Kellie Livingstone. I'm from San Diego, California. I feel super grateful to be from here because it's my favorite place in the world. I've lived all over the world, the country, kind of traveled around and always want to come back home to here. So I found yoga really young. So that's also something I'm super grateful for. I was like in high school going through a rough patch of anxiety and really seeking out ways to calm myself that got me into my body. So I started quite young with vinyasa yoga, just hot and flow and feel good, and started teaching at about 18. So it was an early love for me with yoga, and a really aligned love for me. I was always like moving and dancing and craving that outlet of expression through movement and body. So yoga was always something that was like, I would say I was like born to do this. There's no doubt in my mind that this path is like one that I'll be on for the rest of my life.
I love that. Yes, you're so lucky to have found it so young. And I think especially growing up here in San Diego, I feel when I'm from Wisconsin originally, Milwaukee, and there, even before I moved here in 2012, yoga was still weird, Even when I first told my parents I was becoming a yoga teacher, my mom's like, just don't get too weird, okay? Because in the Midwest, it just wasn't as common. So I, got introduced to it here and there in college. But it wasn't like everyone was doing it, or it wasn't as prevalent. Whereas when I moved out here, it was everywhere and there was so much access to it. I found an outdoor class that was accessible and that I felt like I could just kind of start dipping my toes into the water. But yeah, San Diego, California is such a beautiful home of yoga, and it feels so wonderful to be part of the community here. Mm-hmm. And I think even people visiting San Diego or just moving here, I love when someone says, oh, I'm new to San Diego and new to yoga. And you can tell it's kind of that thing of like, I'm in California now. Of course I'm going to try yoga.
Of course. And like my dad really loves when I give him this shout out, but he took me to my first Bikram class when I was 12 years old. And I remember looking around and being like, I think I'm a little too young to be here, but it never felt weird. It never felt like awkward. It was always like, we're just moving our bodies. We're just sweating in this room. We're just, breathing in this really unique way. And I think San Diego has a lot to do with that. You're totally right. It's a really open-minded place. It's a really welcoming place. And also, to that matter, quite a spiritual place, if you ask me.
Yes, I'm working through the autobiography of a yogi. I picked it up and put it down and picked it up and put it down. And my former roommate lives by it. She literally did his journey.
Wow.
And so I'm like, okay, it's time. I'm working through it. And yeah, he has pictures of the Self-Realization Center that he built here just in North County, which is really amazing. And so going forward into your path, did your parents practice yoga? You said your dad took you to your first class. That's amazing.
I know. My dad and I have a really special relationship. So no, we didn't grow up practicing yoga, but I think Bikram really was prevalent back in, I was, I don't know, 17 years ago or something. And I think it was very trendy at the time. So he was like, let's go try this hot yoga thing. And it was really something we could do to relate with each other. And then years later, when I started doing it, like I said, in college and did my teacher training, it was like just already really ingrained in who I was and how I expressed myself and really showed up in the world.
And you have yoga therapy in your title. So I'd love you to talk about that. And, for anyone not sure what's the difference between yoga therapy and working with a yoga therapist versus Yoga Alliance certified yoga teacher. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot because it's kind of also a hot topic and also a little hazy, I think, in how to define yoga therapy. But yeah, I started teaching the hot, sweaty vinyasa that I was really called to as a teenager. And it was soon after my 200-hour, I did another 300-hour training. It was all about prana and prana flow and the subtle body. And all of a sudden, I started to realize there was so much more to this practice than just poses. And really, its potential to heal is infinite and vast and very ancient as well. So after that 300-hour training, I was in Colorado at the time, moved back to San Diego, and not too long after signed up for a yoga therapy training at the Soul of Yoga in Encinitas, where Yogananda wrote the autobiography of Yogi. So talk about a sacred place to do a really amazing training. And I'd heard of yoga therapy within my realm of being interested of anxiety and depression, like I mentioned, as a way to heal it through yoga. And I signed up for the training. That would have been in 2015, I believe. And I've been slowly working my way through it. It's quite long. It's an 800-hour program with intensives in anatomy and physiology and direct application to clients. And then all sorts of things like pranayama, going through kosha healing, chakra healing, how to hold space, everything under the sun. The training is very extensive and thorough. And I've been using those tools to help clients. It's a one-on-one practice where you're really honing in on how yoga can address someone's healing path in body, mind, spirit, heart. And that's really been my path over the past few years, is moving from really showing up in a group setting to more and more one-on-ones and specialization and working with people that, quite frankly, are suffering to a degree. So
you said that yoga, one of the things that was drawing you most to yoga at the beginning was to help manage your anxiety. And so I'd love for you to share kind of what you found along the way for anyone listening who may, still be toward the beginning of their journey or still really dealing with that. Is there anything you would say about that?
Totally. The first step with so many clients for me is just getting someone to recognize and learn how to breathe. And we can notice that anxiety has a certain breath pattern, and so does depression. And when we take that lens of becoming aware of our breath throughout our day, aware of our breath through those kind of peaks and valleys in our moods, if we find ourselves on that ride often, which personally I do. So I really think the first step is breath awareness, and then using the breath as one of the most powerful tools to really redirect our nervous system in a really significant way.
Lately, obviously, things have looked a little different in the yoga world. So, like you had mentioned, public classes are a little more difficult to even come into or encounter or experience, especially if you are here in San Diego. And our yoga studios are still supposed to be closed and gyms are supposed to be closed and all that. And luckily we have outside. So we have a little bit of that freedom. But, I've heard from many students myself that it's hard. It's hard to do the same practice in these new ways. We're all learning, we're all adapting, both as students and as teachers, to this new environment. And I've noticed you've started putting more content out there virtually and through Reels as well as through online content. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that process. And if you have any advice for teachers also looking to translate their teachings to the online space.
Yeah. I think 2020 was a year that forced us out of our comfort zone in so many ways. And for me, that was something I always wanted to do, was show up more online, both for one-on-one stuff with yoga clients all around the world, and maybe that couldn't even leave their house for that matter, but on a bigger scale to showing up for my Instagram community and my social media support system that honestly last year grew more than I ever could have imagined. And it all really came back to just a willingness to show up, even when it was really challenging, which it got really challenging. And sometimes the creative flow isn't there. So I really try to just create when I'm feeling inspired and give myself permission to not create when I'm not feeling inspired, which happens. And I suppose it all comes back to we can only give from the overflow of our cup. If we're not nourishing ourselves in body, in mind, and really that soul piece is huge, to give from the overflow to how you show up in a virtual setting, as well as, of course, how you show up in life. But as far as Instagram and Reels, I'm just one of those people that really loves it. I think a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with social media, which I totally get. And I really admire people that are off it altogether. However, that's really not me. I've always really, really loved it. And I love the creative element of it, like being an artist of this platform that's going to be a little time capsule for me of where I was at in my teaching, where I was at in my relationships, my life, my career. And to go back to your question on the advice is to just do your best to show up, even when it's tough, show up and tell others that, they're not alone in feeling what they're feeling too.
Yes, I think that is the beautiful thing, is the connection that we get, especially since we maybe haven't been able to see our communities in person as much. Here's one more way to stay connected. And I mean, as a marketing background, Reels are the Instagram's new thing. So any yoga teachers listening, learning the channels and the spaces and understanding that there's algorithms involved in these things. And typical posts are only going to reach 5% of your audience. But if you do leverage something like this Reel, which is kind of mirroring what's happening over on TikTok, and you can leverage and make this kind of content, it's going to get seen by so many more people because it's the new Instagram thing. But I think there is also something to really catering the content to what that new thing is. You can't just take what you were doing and expect it to fly over there, because it is kind of this unique format. It's these really short videos. I love picking brains of my friends and family and, anyone else that we know that might be practicing yoga, which is especially why I love this show and the Yoga for Balance podcast, because I just get to have these awesome conversations and learn from you and others about all these different things that are happening and opportunities. And yeah, my friends I could just scroll on those all day, like the TikToks and the ones where they're showing what you're doing wrong, or they're doing these little things. So having those conversations and noticing the things that make you spend an hour on Instagram or a half hour on TikTok or whatever it is, and then saving those ideas. And then to your point, when you feel the creative urge, you have a kind of bank of things going, and boom, you're ready to go.
Yeah, that is literally my process to a T. I think you really touched on a key point, which back to awareness. You have to have that awareness of where we need to pivot, where we might be able to thrive a little bit more, and in a really I guess, silly way, like the algorithm is that. And so it's fun to play around with new trends and see what is, why they are so popular, because they're short, they're digestible, they're entertaining. And like your friend said, you can just learn so much information and see so many different perspectives in a very short amount of time, which is, I think, why TikTok and Reels have blown up to be as successful as they are. And I really started creating them because I saw everywhere that like the number one way to grow was to create Reels. So I got on it early. I went pretty hard, pretty fast with just like anytime I had an idea, like got faster and faster at the process. And now it's like, it's so fun and almost effortless to have these little clips that, especially from the feedback I've been getting, have been inspiring and helpful, and informative for people that could benefit from anything from your shoulders to your plants to acro yoga to all sorts of things on there.
And since we're talking about it, can you share where people can follow you on Instagram?
Absolutely. So my handle is just at Kellie Livingstone Yoga, Kellie with an IE. And yeah, that's like my main, I really chose Instagram to hone in on at an early time in my career. And I also mentor a lot of teachers around this concept of like just prioritizing where you want to show up 100% with your whole heart. And whether that's your email list or your Facebook page, or maybe you're a little bit more private and you have like a WhatsApp group, or you have some sort of forum that you can express yourself and show up fully for. And a long time ago when I started traveling, I like made that decision to let it be Instagram because it was so versatile, pretty user friendly for someone not great with technology. And yeah, like I said, it's been a fun journey on there.
And you've also introduced yoga bundle videos. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you decided to land on that for the video offering?
Totally. So again, a little bit of like I was forced to do it with the discomfort that was 2020, but was really grateful to have my first bundle. Was inspired by a friend of mine, Goldie Graham, who is just an amazing yoga teacher. She's a great human. Everything she puts out is done again with the whole heart. And so I really admire that. And I liked the bundle concept versus a lot of teachers will show up for like a virtual class every week or have a namastring where you have to publish to it regularly. And I really liked that I could just choose when I was going to send out a bundle and not have that kind of consistency of having to create content when maybe I didn't feel like creating content or was focusing on something else. So the bundles were my way to kind of show up when I wanted to with an idea that I thought was inspiring. So my first series was on, it's called the Desk Dweller Bundle. So it's for people that were sitting a lot. And this was at the beginning of COVID. So when we were very much so at home, working, sitting, quarantining. And so that was my first one. The second one I made on my own, which was a new challenge, and I was pretty proud of myself to publish and get that all edited and all that jazz. And that one was all in breath work, which is one of my passions. And then the last one I made was my signature vinyasa bundle, because that's also one of my passions. And unfortunately, I actually filmed a new one like a week and a half ago, and I got some settings wrong, and I have to scratch it and and start all over. So that also happens with virtual content creation, as you probably know yourself.
That's why I moved away from Instagram Live. I
Yeah.
loved it. I felt like it was helping me grow as well. It was helping reach people. It, before Reels became a thing, was one of Instagram's bigger things they were pushing. And since then, since Reels have been introduced, they moved away from that because the last couple of months it just kept bugging out. I would end the broadcast and it would delete the video and it wouldn't let me upload it. And I'm like, I just wasted an hour of my time. I would have rather, knowing that wasn't going to work, have filmed the class and then edited it later and known I have this evergreen piece of content. And I think there is so much beauty to being able to package something up and put it on, your website or wherever it is you're hosting, and to be able to make money in your sleep, right? I think that's the ultimate dream. Is it's an efficient use of your time, and I do think it can help reach more people. I think the hard thing with the Instagram Live or even the Zoom and what you're talking about, the Nama Stream, something like that, was also, if we're trying to reach this global audience, what is the one day and time that everyone can meet at? It's really hard. And then often that day and time might compete with my in person day and time experience that I have planned in San Diego. So yeah, I think there's a lot of beauty to just being able to record. I think it's a little more effort on the front end of figuring out the technical side of it, of course, but I definitely think video isn't going anywhere and there is still a lot of opportunity to continue to serve people in the online space that way.
Exactly. And like, it always comes back to why. Like, what is the intention of gaining Instagram followers? What is the intention of filming these bundles, or whatever that looks like for you as a yoga teacher? And the intention is to share yoga, right? Is to share these healing and nourishing practices that are ancient and have been around a lot longer than any of us, with a wisdom that can help us. And really, during these difficult times, we can use it as an anchor, as a tool to ground, to calm, to manage stress, all the things to keep us healthy.
And you mentioned that breath is one of your passions. I wonder if you can guide us through a breathing technique.
So my favorite breath technique, and I was actually a little nervous for an interview because it's been a little while. So to help with anxiety, back to that, I usually teach this breath practice. It's called stair step breathing. In Sanskrit, you might call it Viloma pranayama, or an interrupted breath. And you can interrupt your inhale and your exhale in different ways to affect your nervous system specifically. So we'll do the stair step breath, stepping down, to help with calming, down regulating, kind of grounding into this Thursday afternoon together. So we'll just take a deep breath in through your nose. And you're going to take 3 little exhales through the nose, as if you were stepping down each breath. And then do that again, breathing in. 3 exhales out. Doing that a few more times on your own. With every exhale, imagining softening a little, settling a little. And then a cleansing breath when you're ready, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And just noticing how you feel. Noticing what's changed, or what is exactly the same. And you can take your hands together and start to rub them until you feel some heat and some warmth. And cup your hands over your eyes as you blink a few times, readjusting to the light, to the space. And then settling back into the space. How was that for you?
Beautiful. I definitely feel more calm and relaxed. Thank you.
Oh, you're so
And I'm sure
welcome.
everyone listening at home or in their car hopefully is feeling the effects as well. I'm sure they are.
In your car, don't close your eyes.
Good point. Save this and do it at home.
Exactly.
And then lastly, do you have a 10-minute tip for anyone listening to find a little more balance today?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier, and it actually reminds me of a yoga sutra all about balance, which is Pratipakshabhavana, and it's heal by applying gentle opposition. And that's just one translation, but that's how I believe and how I translate it. And I guess what that means is like taking in an inventory of your life and the things that you're ingesting and the things that you're doing and seeing and feeling, and from that place noticing where you might be able to integrate more balance. And to do that is what this yoga sutra is all about. You heal by doing a little bit of the opposite. So, for example, during 2020, I would catch myself feeling, quite depressed sometimes, maybe isolated, lonely, heavy, tired. And I just thought to myself, what is a compassionate way to heal by gentle opposition? And sometimes that looked like going on a really slow walk with my dog. So sometimes that meant lying in child's pose for 20 minutes because I couldn't really do much else or didn't feel the desire to do much else. And it's that application of the opposite that for me has really changed both how I show up as a teacher, as a space holder, as a healer, and also how I show up, myself as an individual, as Kellie. And like it's just an ongoing practice of dancing, finding that ebb and flow, that dance through life of going out and going in and contracting and expanding and inhaling and exhaling. And so many of the fundamentals of yoga philosophy and many Eastern philosophies for that matter talk about this duality of this and that, of yin and yang, of sthira and sukha, of sun and moon right behind you there. There's this forever dynamic and dualistic quality that's in life, that's in religion, that's in philosophy, and I suppose within the tools of yoga, like that's what it always comes back to, is that balance of whatever is opposing each other. And to tie it up with answering, well, how does that show up as far as bliss? As in yoga, we might say ananda. What a question. I feel like when you are in balance and, dare I say, in flow state, whatever that means to you, our prana, our life force is flowing, it's moving, it's not stagnant, right? And when things move, there's a heat, a light that literally comes from within. And in yoga, we would say that is bliss, that light that comes from finding a path that literally lights you up, that is a perfect environment to find a flow state of up and down and left and right. But there's something that keeps you in between. And that's that awareness and that willingness to be open to bliss, to letting that light come from a place within yourself. And I feel like one of my lessons in life is like to always remember that light can only come from within myself. Like one more time, so it only comes from within. It's like it's in so much of this path too is that reminder that it all starts right here.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you would like to add for anyone listening to wrap up our conversation?
Hmm. As just like a fellow podcast lover and listener, I think it's just a cool community of people that have a willingness to listen. So I just want to really share my gratitude to you, to anyone that listens to this conversation, and that willingness to be open, to be a student, to be a listener, which, I mean, talk about a skill in life that is so essential, the ability to listen and to be a student of each other, right? Of whoever and whatever we're willing to learn from, like it could be our teacher. So yeah, wrapping up with just so grateful for that, for this strange little online community of everything from podcasts to Instagram to Zoom to just technology. You know how it is. It's wide, and I'm grateful for it now more than ever.
Thank you. And I'm grateful for you and all of the work that you're doing. So thank you for showing up, especially through a tough year, in order to share what you've learned and experienced and know and are continuing to learn with people in real time and with your students, with your online communities and everything you're doing. So I really appreciate you and appreciate you for taking the time to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Loved chatting with you.
Yes, and I look forward to taking your class in the
Yay.
future.
Crossing my fingers.
And where can we mention your Instagram, but where else can people find you?
Yeah, so Instagram's a great place to find me. Also, I'm one of the teachers over at Sojourn Healing Collective. I teach a couple classes there. I'm leading their 200-hour training this year. And I'm also over at Pure to Point Wellness, which is formerly Elka's Yoga Studio in Point Loma. And it's there that I'm leading their 300-hour training later this year. So lots of places to find me. The online setting, again, I have a website as well, kellylivingstoneyoga.com, with all those fun bundles on there too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it was so wonderful to connect and chat and share your story today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this Yoga for Balance episode, and thank you again to Kellie for being on the show. Please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen and share this episode if you think there's someone in your life who could benefit from the message. Thank you again, and until next time, namaste.